Hey guys, Brian from Boas here. Has your pet boa escaped and now you're panicking trying to find it? Well, hopefully you've come to the right place. Today I'm going to talk about boa escapes, how to prevent them, and how to recapture an escaped pet boa. So first of all, I wanted to say that pretty much everybody that keeps boas and other snakes eventually has one escape, even those who won't admit it. I have had quite a few escape over the years, probably more than I'd like to admit. Although with experience over time I've been getting better and better at preventing them from escaping and recapturing them if they do escape. But of course, when you have as many snakes for as long a period of time as I do, unfortunately a few are bound to escape. Snakes are natural escape artists, and if they have the will to escape and there is an opportunity, believe me, they're going to take advantage of it. So if your pet escapes, you probably feel pretty bad right now, but trust me, we've all been there, and almost always it turns out okay. So chances are pretty good you're going to get your boa back. So I'm going to talk about how to prevent escapes later on in the video, but I thought I'd cut right to the chase and talk about the best way to recapture an escaped boa. So you've opened up your boa's enclosure, you look in, and now you're horrified because it's not in there. So what should you do? Well, the first thing you want to do, you want to be absolutely sure it's not in the enclosure. And this happens a lot because boas love to hide, and lots of us use a particulate substrate like cocoa husk or mulch or aspen, something like that. Boas love to bury themselves in these substrates, and they're very good at hiding. Sometimes they'll just have their head sticking out and you can barely see their eyes. Sometimes they're completely buried. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go through all the substrate with your hands, just sift through it. Be absolutely sure that your boa is not in the enclosure. You know, several times I've looked in the enclosure, I can't find the boa, but then I go sifting through the substrate and there it is. So do that first. The next thing you want to do, if it's not in the enclosure, is make sure you didn't accidentally put it in a different enclosure. And this happens to me sometimes when I'm doing breeding trials, because I'll be taking a snake out of an enclosure, pairing it up, and then a few weeks later I'll be separating it to feed. So I'll take it back to its original enclosure. Sometimes I've accidentally put the snake in the wrong enclosure. So I go to feed them and I open up the enclosure, it's not there. And initially I panic, but then I just look in the enclosure above. And sometimes in a rack, I've actually found that I put the snake in with another snake. It's in the slot above where it was supposed to go, so there's two snakes in there. So I just take it out and put it back in its rightful tub. And that's happened before. And then sometimes, people move snakes around, especially if you have a large collection. You might just reorganize and you put a snake in a different cage or a different rack, and you kind of forgot about it, and then you go to the rack where you think it is and it's not there. So sometimes you just have to check and make sure it didn't get into a different rack. And then sometimes people will even put snakes in snake sacks or another holding receptacle while they're cleaning the cage, and then they kind of get distracted, do something else, and they forgot about it. So just really think, maybe your snake's not lost, maybe you put it somewhere else. Okay, so once you've exhausted that and you've confirmed your snake is truly missing, you want to start the search. And so searching for snakes can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. I found that the vast majority of times I don't find a snake when I'm searching. I find the snake just later on. It just turns up unexpectedly when I'm least expecting it. But you want to start your search. And I will say that I have had, over the years, probably about a dozen or so snakes escape on me over, now going on 40 years now. And all but once I've had the snake recaptured in perfect health, and it's been completely fine. One of the first times, or maybe even the first time a snake escaped on me, when I was just 12 years old, I had this beautiful speckled king snake, made the mistake of keeping it in a fish tank with an unsecure top, and it actually escaped the day after I got it. I was so disappointed. I had saved up so much to buy the snake, and I was so excited about it, and then it wasn't there, and it was just like a huge punch to the gut. I looked around, my parents helped me look, but we didn't find it. And then unfortunately I found it a couple months later, and it had died. It looked like it had been dehydrated. It had gotten out and, succumbed because there wasn't water for it to drink. And I was just devastated, as you might imagine. Fortunately, since then, anytime a snake has gotten out over the years, I've gotten it back. Sometimes snakes have been out for as long as a month and a half. And in fact, this is the son of a Pearl Island Boa that got out. My big Pearl Island female got out once. She was gone for about a month and a half, and I still to this day don't know exactly where she went. My snake room is pretty secure. It doesn't have any exits or entrances that snakes can easily access. I looked everywhere. I looked in all of the, what I thought would be the most likely places for that she would go. Nothing. And I didn't see any signs of her either. And in fact, I had almost given up, and I came down to the snake room one day, and I saw her coiled on top of one of the racks and promptly recaptured her. And luckily she was fine. I fed her a few times. She was back up in shape. And in fact, she bred again just a few months later after she had escaped. Since then, I've really secured her cage, so she's in a sliding glass front cage, and some snakes can actually push the glass with their snout and kind of work their way out. So I have it locked now. It's impossible to get out from the inside when it's latched, then the lock is in place. When you're searching to try to re-find your lost boa, a couple of points you want to keep in mind. The first is that the boa is not likely to have gone very far. He's probably going to go until he finds a suitable hiding place, like a cramped, enclosed space in the dark, preferably a little bit on the warm side, and then he's just going to hide there. Could be anything like a bag or a box or inside some furniture, something like that. But typically, they're not going to move very far. The other thing to keep in mind is that boas typically will climb up when they're looking for a hiding place. So you want to definitely look up on the tops of bookcases, on the tops of furniture. In your snake room, they'll typically climb up on the top of a rack, but they like to climb up. So if you have an enclosed, warm space higher up, that'd probably be the best place to look. But of course, you're going to want to look everywhere. Starting right around the enclosure and then kind of fan your way out. It's probably pretty unlikely that they're going to get to another room, but there's nothing to stop them. And I found that when searching for the snakes, unfortunately, you're probably not going to find them, even if you do a thorough search. And it can be really frustrating. They're just really good at hiding and, just lying quietly. Maybe sometimes you'll hear something moving at night, something like that. But if you don't find your snake upon a searching, even though you probably feel awful, don't lose hope. Chances are pretty good it's going to turn up when you least expect it. And most often when I've had snakes escaped, it's been babies or young snakes, and typically they're relocated within a few days. Sometimes I do find them on my searches, sometimes they just kind of show up. I've had several times where I see a baby loose, I didn't even know it was out. So it probably just escaped, that day or the day before. So chances are you will find your snake, but if searching, you want to start in areas close by and you want to look up. There have been a number of people have proposed tricks to find lost snakes. I've seen things like people put flour on the floor, so when the snake slithers through that, it leaves a track. Or putting out hiding places like old cereal boxes or old snake hides on the floor to try to find a place where your snake can hide. I've even seen things where people like put a mouse on like a string, dead or alive even, and then they put it out as bait. And I wouldn't really recommend doing any of these tricks. I've tried some of them in the past and they really don't seem to work very well. It might work for you, if you want to try it, go for it, but what I found in the past is the best way to find a snake, if you can't find it while searching, is just to spend time in that room, and chances are it's going to show up when you least expect it. If you do have any tips or tricks for recapturing a lost snake though, I'd love to hear them, so write them below. Let me know if any of these tricks have worked for you to help you find your lost boas. hopefully those tips will help you find your lost snake. But next I wanted to talk about how to prevent your snake and boa from escaping in the first place. The first thing you want to do is just give it a reason not to escape. If a boa is in an enclosure and it has all of its husbandry needs met, it's probably not even going to want to escape. And by this I mean it has the right temperature gradient, the right humidity, a suitable substrate that makes it feel comfortable, and lots of hiding places both on the cool side and on the warm side. So if a snake can find a place to hide in its enclosure where it feels secure, it's pretty good chance it's not even going to want to escape. You also want to make sure your snake is properly fed. If a snake is really hungry, it's going to be more likely to try to escape. Of course, we don't want to power feed, we don't want to overfeed them, but we have to feed them enough so that they're satiated. Give your boa a reason to want to stay in its enclosure, and you probably have a safe space in your own home, a man cave, woman cave, whatever you call it, where you can go just to escape, and that's somewhere that you're not going to want to escape. So maybe there is a nice comfortable couch and a nice big TV and a refrigerator full of beer and snacks, maybe a guitar if you like to play guitar, maybe your reptiles, somewhere you just want to go to get away. So you want to make your boa's enclosure like that, somewhere it would want to go to get away. And in fact, it's a good sign when you open up your boa's enclosure and it voluntarily just slithers right back in, because you know that it likes to be there and it's comfortable there and it's not going to want to escape. So most of my boas, I'm pretty confident, are quite comfortable in their enclosures. I don't see any behaviors that suggest that they want to escape, and you know that you're doing your husbandry well if that is the case. So we want to take away the desire to escape from the boas. We also want to prevent the opportunity to escape from the boas. And this is where you have to look at your enclosure and you have to decide, is it escape proof? And so of course a lot of the enclosures that were used in the past, like fish tanks, were really not suitable or not intended for snakes, so they weren't the best as far as escape proofing. And in fact, when I lost that king snake when I was 12 years old, it was from a fish tank with just a fish tank cover, which is like an awful thing for keeping snakes, but I was 12, I didn't know any better. But that escape could easily have been prevented had I had a suitable enclosure for my king snake. What I've seen happens with opportunity, a lot of times someone has a rack that's not properly secured, and this applies mostly to babies because babies are smaller, they're really adept at getting through little tight spaces, and a lot of times if you have a rack, even a commercially made rack, there's too much space between the tub and the top of the rack, and the boa can just kind of push its way out. And I've had this happen before. In fact, this is now a 3-year-old Peruvian. This guy escaped on me when he was a baby out of the back of the rack, just because the spacing between the top of the rack and the tub was not quite tight enough, and he was able to just squeeze his way out. And believe me, they will squeeze, and even a small space can be exploited by a baby boa. Similarly, a lot of times people don't push the rack in enough and the tub is left out slightly. There's a little bit of a gap where the tub is sticking out, and your boa will get out of that gap. So don't give it the opportunity. Always double check, make sure all of the tubs are pushed in enough. Make sure they're not sticking out the back. I mean, most good racks have a mechanism to prevent the tub from sticking out the back, but that can happen sometimes. Sometimes it can just be sticking out on a corner, and the boa is going to exploit that and get out the back. So with your baby boa racks, you want to be super careful that there's no room for them to get out. And this is where I've had the most frequent escapes over the years, just baby boas getting out of racks through this little tiny space at the back. Thought I'd grab another young redtail. This is a 2021 Suriname, and this guy didn't escape, but I did have a couple babies from that year that managed to get out of their racks. Luckily they were recaptured within a day or two, but it's always the babies that you gotta watch out for. But of course, adults can escape also, and this most frequently happens when a boa is in an inappropriate or a poorly secured cage. So if at all possible, you want to use a dedicated snake cage that has either a sliding glass front or a hinged front, that has a way of locking it. Okay, and you want to use the locks if the snakes are active. Most snakes won't push against sliding glass doors. In fact, I've got quite a few cages, animal plastics cages with the sliding glass, and most of them I don't need to worry about locking. They're just not going to push them open because they're happy in their enclosure. In theory, they could push them open, and this is how my Pearl Island Boa I was talking about got out. And after that happened, I always locked that cage securely, so there's no way that she can get out. If you're using a fish tank or any kind of cage that has a really poorly secured lid, there's a really good chance your snake's going to just push it out and escape, and possibly do damage to itself and or your apartment as well. I've seen some pretty bad setups where people just have like a screened top on top of a fish tank and they just put books on top or rocks or something like that. Just a really bad idea, because your snake's probably going to push it up and then they're going to fall, possibly injure the snake, maybe even break the glass tank. So trust me, you want to get a dedicated snake cage, preferably made of plastic, or keep them in some kind of large rack system like I have here. It's just a much better solution for keeping boas than like a fish tank or something like that, and much less likely for the snake to escape from. So anyway, those are my thoughts on escape snakes. If you're panicking right now because your snake's loose, chances are you're going to get it back. But just keep an eye out for it, and hopefully it'll be back before too long. As always, shoot me any questions or comments you have. If you have any tips on capturing snakes, please write them below. Thanks for watching, and enjoy your boas.